FLM, wide open thinking, world-class work, and far-reaching results. Now with locations in Minneapolis, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Washington, D.C. A strategic marketing and communications company dedicated to serving clients who specialize in the business of agriculture and the life of rural communities.
Welcome to Washington Week in Review. I'm Sarah Gonzalez, an associate editor with Agri-Pulse.
And I'm Aarian Marshall, also an associate editor with Agri-Pulse. We had a pretty busy week on the Hill, I'd say. It's the last week before Congress goes into recess for about 5 weeks. They'll get back here on September 9th. So we had some last-minute farm deal wheeling and dealing yesterday. Frank Lucas spoke at the Agribusiness Club yesterday. He's the chair of the House Agriculture Committee, and he said that the Republicans are readying a proposal for a $40 billion cut over the next 10 years for the nutrition title. Remember, last month the House passed a farm-only farm bill, but not a nutrition title, so they're working on that now before they can get to Congress with the Senate. The Democrats were not very happy about this. Colin Peterson, who's the ranking member of the House Agriculture Committee, shot back that this was just a political messaging bill, while Debbie Stabenow, who is the Senate Agriculture Committee chair, said that this farm bill is a ticking time bomb. She criticized House Majority Leader Eric Cantor for failing to produce a bill that's going to allow both parties to come to some kind of agreement. And she said she's worried that they're not going to be able to pass a farm bill before the one-year extension expires September 30th of this year.
And the $40 billion cuts is even more than the previous farm bill from the House.
That's true.
So definitely not something the Senate would ever accept.
Absolutely.
And later that day, the Senate side announced their farm bill conferees for a potential conference with the House farm bill whenever that happens. And the Democrats on the conferee list are Stabenow, Leahy, Harkin, Baucus, Brown, Klobuchar, and Bennett. The Republicans are Cochran, ranking member Cochran, Roberts, Chambliss, Boozman, and Hoeven. And in trade this week, USTR Ambassador Michael Froman met with some ag stakeholders, as well as met with the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Tom Donahue. He started off discussing the Trans-Pacific Partnership that involves 12 countries in the Asia-Pacific region, and which Japan recently joined. He discussed the issues with Japan that he said they're willing to work out, and he also, I think his words were cautiously optimistic that TPP would be completed by the end of this year. He also talked about the free trade agreement negotiations with the EU, the TTIP, as we like to call it. Same issues there, still working some kinks out. They've only had one official negotiation meeting, but he said another one would be coming up in October where the real negotiations would start. They also discussed China, and Tom Donahue mentioned a trip he had taken where he saw a lot more willingness to have a trade deal a bilateral trade treaty between the U.S. and China. Froman agreed, but also said China had a lot of internal issues to work out before that would be possible. They also met with some ag stakeholders in a private meeting, which USA Rice reported on a little bit. Talked about TTIP and TPP and some barriers to trade there.
And there was more Japan news this week as well. They resumed their purchase of Western soft white wheat, which they had stopped buying rather, at the end of May when it was discovered that unapproved GMO wheat was in an Oregon wheat field. So they had stopped buying it then, and now they're, thankfully for the wheat industry, they're back to buying it, and they'll actually resume buying, I think, about 90,000 metric tons by August 7th is when it will start flowing over to Asia again.
Right, so that'll be good.
Yeah.
And related to that and GMO issues, a few biotech companies launched a website called GMOanswers.com where they're accepting all questions from the public on their concerns about GMO products, GMO food, how they're grown. I'm sure this wheat situation has sparked more public debate about that, so it should be a pretty busy website for them.
And in regulation news, last week the FDA released their Food Safety Modernization Act, their new proposed rules, two of them, and they're dealing with importation. One is on foreign supplier verification programs, and that requires American importers to have plans to verify that the food they're getting from other countries has gone through a similar food safety system as it is here. And then the second one is dealing with the accreditation of third-party people who are checking those foods as well. So just to make sure that the food, which is 15% of our food supply we get from overseas, just to check that it's going through the same system that the food that we grow here in the US. And it's actually received pretty positive reviews from the ag industry thus far, which is sort of surprising for a regulation. We're not really used to seeing that here at Agri-Pulse. And over at Cargill, Michael Robach said that it would level the playing field because Cargill is already doing those kind of checks for the food it sees. So now everyone has to do it, which pleased Cargill a lot. So looks like everything's good there.
Yeah, a little more broadly on that Food Safety Modernization Act. FSMA is a lot easier to say. More broadly with FSMA, Julie Caswell, Professor Julie Caswell, an econ professor at University of Massachusetts, led a national coalition for food and ag research lunch and learn seminar on the Hill this week. She talked about the act and some of those certifying issues you were talking about and the research she's doing into switching our food safety system over to a risk-based system rather than what we have now. So look for that. And Caswell will also be the president of the Ag and Applied Economic Association officially next week. So look for what she's saying on those issues.
So next week's going to be pretty quiet, at least on the Hill, because Congress is in recess, but we'll be here online at www.agripulse.com. And also we have we're actually taking a hiatus for 2 weeks with our weekly newsletter, but watch out in 3 weeks for that coming at you if you're a subscriber, which you should be. So, yeah, thanks for watching.
See you next week.